Hello and welcome to The Bus by TML Studios, the latest bus simulator to hit the Steam market and probably one of the first bus simulators that actually has the potential to compete with Omsi 2, the bus simulator that has held its market dominance for over 8 years. In this video, I'm going to be giving you a comprehensive review and overview of The Bus by TML Studios, which will be released on the Steam store on the 25th of March 2021 as Early Access Phase 1. So in this review I will be talking about everything from controls to functionality, model quality, physics, sounds, graphics, performance, loading times and much more. Everything will be timestamped for your convenience so you can navigate through the parts that are most important to you. Furthermore, there will also be a comprehensive summary at the very end, so if you want to get a brief synopsis of everything and my final verdict, that will also be timestamped for you as well. So first of all, before we begin, there are just a few caveats I should mention. First of all, in the interest of transparency, I was provided a key to this game by Aerosoft. Thanks to Aerosoft for providing me with the key, but nonetheless, that does mean I did receive the product for free, so it's something to bear in mind just in the interest of transparency. Second of all, do bear in mind that this is Early Access Phase 1, so this is based on the Phase 1 of the Early Access. I will talk a bit about what's going to happen in the future of the game towards the end of the video, but then again, once this is released as a final release in about a years and a half time, I will have to probably redo the video most likely. But nonetheless, this should still give you an insight into the main and the core features of the bus, and at least what is featured in the game as of now. Finally, I am running this on a low spec PC, so perhaps some of you people who have higher end PCs will be able to run this at a better quality and thus may have a slightly different playing experience. So with that out of the way, let's get into the review. So the first thing you'll notice is that we have spawned in here at TXL Flughafen in Berlin, Germany, and we are actually outside the bus. So as is kind of pretty much standard with loads of new simulators like Train Sim World 2, Tram Sim, just to name a few, you can actually walk around, so you're not confined to the cockpit of the bus. So as you can see here, we can walk around. Another thing to mention is that, as is the case with other TML games, you can actually walk as far as you want, so there's no boundary like in Tram Sim where you can only walk within a certain radius. If you want, you can walk all the way to Alexanderplatz. I think that's pretty much possible, although why you want to do that is a different question altogether. But nonetheless, this is a nice feature because it adds to the simulation experience. You can simulate ending the tour, going into, allowing the bus at the depot, going for your break, etc. So yeah, I mean, walking around is pretty much standard, nothing too much to say about it. It works. Anyway, so the first thing we do is we open up the doors. So the way we get in the bus is we just simply click the front door. One thing you'll notice is that although in real life the buses, the way you open the door is if you see this red button, I think it's usually that button that opens them. Here it opens by clicking the door. So obviously not very realistic, but perhaps it's something that's going to be improved in the future. But nonetheless, that's how you get into the bus. So then if we go into the cockpit, probably one of the more important questions to determine how realistic the simulator is how many of the buttons are clickable. Well, we've got some good news. So first of all, let's start up the engine by clicking I. So as you can see here at the bottom left, we have some prompts telling us what to do. So then we start the engine again, pressing and holding I, we click G, and then we can close the door with F9. And if we go outside, we click 1, then we're outside as well. So what we do now is we're going to take a look at all the clickable buttons. So if you click here number 5 and number 6, it brings you around to all the different buttons. And what you'll notice is if we click the door, the front door will open. If you click the middle button, the middle door will open. And if you click the rear button, the rear door will open. In addition, you can also set the gears by clicking them. And then also we can make the bus kneel. We can make the bus kneel down, but we can't do that while the doors are open, because the bus automatically kneels down when the doors are open. But what you'll notice now is if you click kneel down, not available during service. Okay, let's try this lift up. Now you'll notice that it's lifting the bus up, as you can see here. And if you take a look outside, you'll see that the bus has been elevated. In addition, you can go back into the cockpit if you click number 5 it was, and then we can lift down as well, as you can see, and then it lowers down. If you click 6, here's our cockpit. So there is our RPM gauge and our kmh gauge. And then now the temperatures as well. If you go into number 7, there's more buttons we can click. So you can turn on the fog lights on and off. You have your traction control. So you can also use T for this, but basically it allows you to keep a constant speed without having to hold the pedal down. And then we can turn on the interior lights as well. So everything is clickable, as you can see here. So it's, you know, adds to the realism. You can adjust the handbrake by clicking on it and just dragging it. So when it comes to functionality, you know, stuff is clickable, which adds to the realism. So obviously that is an extra because that is something that is featured in Omsi 2. So naturally, in order for it to have a chance to compete with Omsi 2, one would expect that it has the functionality of Omsi 2, such as being able to click the buttons, which, as you saw, can be done. One thing is that there we go. So now if you click Y, it also shows you the mouse. So like Omsi 2, you don't have to be going into the views. You can just click Y and then you can open this door here, as you can see. Oh, not the door, the window. And you can click on stuff like this. So again, quite realistic, quite neat, what you'd expect in a realistic bus simulator. So when it comes to functionality and clickable stuff, everything is there as would be expected. And we can also use the ticket machine. So if you go into the ticket machine, this is actually how we set up our destination. It was before the case that it was with Z, but this was in the alpha stage, so it seems like they have changed that. So now what we have to do is we click start on the ticket machine. We enter our tour number, which is provided to us at the top, which is quite handy, because with Omsi 2 sometimes you have to look a route where, or you know, elsewhere not in Omsi 2 to find it, but you just have it here. So you just put in the number that is shown and you just click enter, and now it will tell us TXL Flughafen Alexanderplatz, and if you go to 1, it's showing us the route as well. There it is, TXL. Pretty neat. And there is also ticket selling. So now hopefully one of the passengers will look for a ticket and we'll be able to show you how the ticket selling works. If not, I'll just have to leave it for whenever it happens. Okay, so none of the passengers wanted a ticket there, but I'll show you the ticket selling when the passenger wants a ticket. So it'll be a bit out of place, but unfortunately I can't force the passengers to buy a ticket if they already have one. I know, not unfortunate, but yeah, is the case. Now, before we start driving, I just want to show you the model quality as well. So as you can see, in terms of modeling of the bus, it is superb. We do have a Scania Citywide LF 18 meter in Omsi 2. So we do have something to compare it to, and it looks pretty much identical. It looks exactly like it does in real life. And obviously the texture quality is higher because it uses the Unreal Engine 4, which has better graphics than Omsi 2. We can walk around in the cab as well, and the windows are also openable in the cab. So as you can see here, we can open the windows and we can close them as we so wish. You can also open the doors, and the ramp is also extendable. So as you can see there, the ramp opens, and they've also, the ramp before it used to go through to the footpath, now it actually stops on the footpath. So it's a good thing I've redone this review, because this review is being made on the 21st of March, which is the day that we're allowed to post videos of it. I had done one last week, but they've added in a number of bug fixes and new features, so it would have been kind of unfair to base the review off a alpha when this is more reflective of the of what you'll be able to purchase on Steam on the 25th of March. There we go. One thing is, it'd be nice if you would be able to sit in the passenger seats, but it's no biggie. So now let's go into the cockpit and let's just take a look at the exterior. Again, the exterior does the bus justice, looks quite good, and you can't fault the modeling of the bus. It's superb. So far when it comes to functionality, what is clickable, what isn't, and when it comes to the model quality, everything is pretty much perfect. Okay, now let's get going. So the way I'm going to do this review is I'm going to be talking about the stuff as we drive the line TXL as well. So now the next thing that probably comes to mind is how exactly do you know what route you are to take and which way you're going. So as you can see here in the bottom right hand corner, we have a minimap. So this minimap is telling us the direction that we need to take. So this is how we know what route to follow. In addition, if you click M, you can extend the map, and then the map will show you the route we're following. So as you can see here, it's this orange and yellow line. I'm not too sure why it changes color like that. And then this is the whole Berlin map as well, with the districts shown in as well. So again, this was added recently. It wasn't in the alpha stage last week, but it's quite good because this way you can also, if you want to go exploring, you can see which roads are where. So it's quite handy. So navigation wise, you shouldn't have any issues. It's a lot simpler than the Omsi 2 waypoint system, and even though we have Omni Navigation in Omsi 2, that is a pair of DLC, it sometimes does not show the maps correctly. Whereas here, as you can see, quite easy to navigate. The map is perfect. It's at the bottom right hand side corner. I'm not sure if you can disable it. I was looking at the settings, perhaps I might have missed it, but I'd say once you learn the route, probably you'd want to remove it just to enhance the experience. Now, one thing to mention here is, as you can see, now we're in a low lit area. So what you may notice is in low lit areas, there tends to be like pixelation on the wheel. So as you can see, the wheel's kind of like flickering a bit. So that is one thing that happens whenever you go to an area that is not getting sunlight exposure, like a tunnel or overpass, when you're going under an overpass. So that is one thing to bear in mind. As you can see now, it looks perfect, but whenever you go somewhere where there is low light, it does actually kind of pixelate the wheel, which takes away a bit from the realism. Just to go back quickly on the navigation, there is also an option where you can have a bus stop. The bus stop is shown as in a green box, so it tells you where to stop. I've disabled that because I feel like it's a bit of it makes it feel a bit too much like a mobile phone game, because mobile phone bus simulators tend to have the stop waypoints that way, but you can enable it if you want. It does also show you the stops in the minimap, so because this is an express route, we obviously don't stop on every stop. If we just look, there'll be a H, which stands for Hauptstelle, which means bus stop in German. Then we'll be able to stop at the bus stops that way. The next thing to discuss is the physics. So as probably is expected, when it comes to physics, it's probably where it probably struggles to compete with Omsi 2 the most. I.e., I'd say out of all things, the physics is probably the weak, not necessarily weakest, but it's not the strongest selling point of the simulator. The physics aren't bad. I mean, they are decent. You know, the articulation is quite good. So by the articulation, I mean the way that the bus, the bendy bus steers. So it does kind of bend together like it should, like a bendy bus should behave. So in that regard, it's quite good. It does also have a bump map. So whenever we're going over bumpy sections of the road, it does rattle quite a bit. And as you know, a lot of modern buses are quite rattly because they're more lightweight. So again, that adds to the realism. One thing I've noticed is that when you're going uphill or downhill, I think the gradient detection isn't great. So that's certainly something that could use improvement, because as it stands, I think Omsi 2 definitely in that regard, it's much better detecting hills and inclines and dips in the road. But again, this is early access, so hopefully some of this stuff will be patched or, you know, improved upon on the future. But that's just one thing to bear in mind. You know, the physics aren't necessarily the strongest part of the simulator, but nonetheless they're okay. But I'd say Omsi 2's physics are, as it stands, better anyway. And then yeah, so as you can see, I think the other thing is about the bumps. I think sometimes it's a bit over exaggerated. There's a bit too much rattling, because I know these buses are very rattly, but I feel like this bus tends to rattle way too much. So I think perhaps it's a tad bit overdone, I find. Anyway. So I don't know why the bus is reversing now. I accidentally clicked something there, but now we can open up the doors, and here we are at the next stop. Let's see if anyone gets on. Yeah, I need to put this into forward. Let's see if someone's gonna get a ticket now. Yes, there we go. So as you can see here, we have ticket selling. So what we do is we click 9, which brings us up to the ticket selling section. We take the money here, so it tells you how much the passenger has given you. So €4, and the price is €3. So we need to give her €1 change. Again, the cash box is pretty much like the one in the Omsi 2, the MAN SD200. It is the same map, albeit this one's the modern version, whereas an Omsi 2 is set 30 years ago. And then we need to give her a ticket. So she wants a single ticket, so we click single. And then she wants an AB, so this is the zone, and then we click a bar and it prints. And that's how the ticket selling works. I'm not sure if you can disable this or not, because I myself am not mad about ticket selling. So it's not, you know, it's not a feature I'm too fussed about having. But as far as I saw, I need to take a better look at how it's disabled in the menu. Now, let's continue. So we click the indicator, and there we go. Away we go. Check the mirror. Not giving us priority. Now the next thing to discuss are the sounds. So again, when it comes to, I think the two areas of Omsi 2 at the moment anyway exceeds the bus by TML is sounds and physics. So the sounds, they're okay. The sounds, like when you're accelerating, you know, there is some of the Scania sounds in there. The sounds are particularly good in the bus by TML when you slow it down, because it's the sounds accurately reflect how the Scania behaves. You can hear the retarder when you're slowing down, which helps slow the bus down, and when it's braking, it's quite good. However, when you're accelerating, I find the sounds are a bit too generic. They're missing some of the real life sounds that the Scania has when revving. I did take a look at a YouTube video of the sounds just to be able to make a comparison, but certainly I think Omsi 2 does still beat the bus in sounds, at least as it stands, because I find they're a bit too generic. You can kind of hear the loop too much here with the bus. So again, hopefully this is something that will be improved upon, but nonetheless, I'm sure for those of you who do also play Omsi 2, you may be aware of V3D. He is currently working on a Enviro 500 MMC for the bus, so perhaps some of the modders will be able to implement better sound qualities in the buses, and perhaps even the physics might be better. Of course, time will tell. But, as was kind of expected, when it comes to sounds and physics, it's probably where it struggles the most to contend with Omsi 2. But nonetheless, this is early access, so we'll see how it gets along. Now, the next thing is the graphics. So as you can see, the graphics are pretty much your standard Unreal Engine 4 graphics. Meaning, they're quite good. I mean, the Unreal Engine 4, it's kind of known for having pretty, kind of good graphics and that stand out. So you can't really fault the graphics. Sorry, this is going into reverse again. Need to click the left mouse button. No, let's open the doors. Oops. Sorry, I ended up going outside of the bus. No. So let's just click the cab and go into drive. Okay. There we go. Sorry about that. Now. So yeah, the graphics generally, they're quite good. You can't really complain about them. But, it's definitely the texture quality, even as before it's come out and from the screenshots people were saying how it looks much better than Omsi 2's graphics. We're not actually stopping at this stop. So as you can see here, the other thing about the graphics is it is kind of determined by the anti-aliasing. So having depending on which settings you use for anti-aliasing, it makes quite a big difference. So as you can see there, we had them at the anti-aliasing on low, and it was quite kind of, it doesn't really look right when you have anti-aliasing on low. So I've kind of put it on low so when I had it on low, so I've put it on medium. So why is this bus not moving? Just bear with me here, not sure what's happened with our bus. There we go. Yeah, it does that sometimes. I don't know why. But anyway, so when it comes to graphics, they're pretty much what you'd expect from the Unreal Engine 4. But the other thing is, a lot of it depends on the GPU you have, because the more powerful your GPU is, the better the experience will be. Because as you can see here, I'm running on a GTX 1050, which is 2 GB of VRAM. So the graphics experience isn't the best, and particularly with the trees. But the higher spec PC you have, the more you'll get out of the graphics. The other thing to mention as well is that one thing I found with the Unreal Engine 4 is that the lighting does kind of make a big difference, because one thing you'll notice is sometimes, depending on the area you're in, the lighting kind of is a bit too over-exaggerated. It's a bit too over-saturated, I find. So that's another thing to mention. I do tend to find that the Unreal Engine 4, everything kind of looks better when you're outside. Inside, it's still not bad. It's still quite decent, but I think outside looks that slightly bit better than the inside. So that's just another thing to bear in mind. And that's something I found with the game as well. And as I said about the graphics, I guess the pixelation in the low lit areas is something that kind of falls on the graphics. But it does happen as well. So whenever there's low lit areas or there's buildings blocking the sunlight, what you find is that you get some pixelation. The other thing is, if you're on a lower end GPU, what you'll notice is at high speeds, the AI cars, they'll be trailing and pixelation as well. So that's kind of falls on the graphics and performance, but that's something that's kind of occurs with Tramsim as well under Unreal Engine 4 games. It's just something to bear in mind. But in terms of texture quality, certainly the graphics exceed Omsi 2's, although you do kind of need a fairly good PC and graphics card to be able to make the most out of the graphics that are in game. Then the next course of the agenda is performance. So performance is quite good. That's the other thing about Omsi 2 and why, you know, a lot of people are kind of now looking for a different bus simulator than Omsi 2 is because optimization in Omsi 2 is really, it's shocking. It's really bad, as we all know. So it just means that at this stage, although Omsi 2 has the edge in the sounds and the physics, when it comes to everything else, it's a bit of a letdown. Really, not letdown, but it's certainly trumped by other simulators. And that's the thing, the performance in the bus is a lot better. So there's sometimes you may get occasional stuttering, but that again is more something you'll encounter on low-end PCs. But even I, who am running this on a fairly low-end PC, i5 G570 GTX 1050, I guess the performance is decent. There's not any stutters, there's no jumping buses, that kind of thing. There's no freezing really, so it runs quite well, I have to say. The other thing is kind of that spans out from the performance is the loading times. The loading times on the bus are just they're next level really, because in Omsi 2 the loading times are atrocious. They're 10 minutes to even get in the game, whereas the bus, it takes about 30 seconds, not even 30 seconds, it takes about 10 seconds to load into the main menu, and then it's about 20 seconds once you've selected. Oh, we're turning. Oops. Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. Got carried away here talking about the things, so we ended up slightly going in the wrong direction, but we'll reverse now. Slowly but surely we'll manage. So yeah, apologies about that. I will have a no commentary video of the line TXL, so you'll be able to get a much better insight of the TXL. This is kind of me giving you a review, or at least my opinions of it anyway. Okay, we're gonna try this. This is gonna be some swan necking, but let's see how it goes. I'm not sure what I clicked. I think I've clicked something and it's activated some sort of brake, because as you can see the bus is crawling along. So let's just see what I've done. Yeah, I do apologize about this. I'll get back to what I was saying now once we get things going. Actually, what we might do is if you click space, there's a space bar, there's a button, if you click it resets the bus for you. So if you ever get stuck, especially with the bendy bus, you can reset the bus. So is that something we might have to look into doing? We shall see now in a moment. Yeah, okay. We're gonna reset the bus because we have kind of gone off the road. Yeah, so there we go. It's reset the bus, and now we're meant to go this way. Let's just check the map. Yeah, so that's a handy feature, because sometimes you get stuck, or if you weren't paying attention, a bit like happened there, kind of went too much talking without actually focusing where we're going. That does happen. As you can see here, it also shows you to the bottom left to stop here, so that's how you know where to get off. Again, you can see a bit of pixelation here on the wheel because, again, the buildings are blocking the sunlight, so that's just something to bear in mind as well. But as I was saying about loading times, the loading times it really takes about a minute to get the game going, if you don't factor in, if you're pretty quick with getting the settings going. But so that's the thing, you know, in the long run, patience wise, your patience won't be worn out with this game, because in contrast to Omsi 2, there's no crashing, so it's optimized fairly well. There was a few crashes, but this is the early alpha stage. But you know, as I've in the more recent days where they've kind of been tweaking and optimizing the game, I found that there's no issues with, you know, crashing. So again, this is another area where the bus just simply trumps Omsi 2. Performance, loading times, and this is quite important because we all know how unstable Omsi 2 is. So this is a stable game, so that's something that is a huge benefit, because at this stage Omsi 2 is also kind of showing its age because it's 32-bit, so that means that it can only use a maximum 4 GB of RAM, and as we have 4K textures now, this is also causing numerous issues. So this is on a 64-bit engine as well, so it's really a bus simulator that's kind of fit for the current times, whereas Omsi 2 arguably is a bit lagging behind. Just to go back on graphics, I forgot to mention something there about the graphics. It was the mirrors, yes. So one thing I find about the Unreal Engine 4 is the graphics settings don't really change things too much, and that's one thing about the Unreal Engine 4, that means it kind of takes away the amount of customizability you have. You can change the lighting with your gamma and contrast, but when you change like texture quality or you change post processing and you put it from low to high, the difference is pretty much negligible, if even noticeable. So that's one other thing to bear in mind with the graphics, is that actually changing the graphics makes very little difference, and it's not that noticeable, I find. And the other thing about graphics is the mirrors as well. Unless you have your mirrors set to high, you can't actually really see very clearly out of them. So in contrast to Omsi 2, where economy and full pretty much makes no difference, as you can see here, the mirror quality is a bit pixelated on high. I've set it to high, so unless you set it to full, it will be a tad bit pixelated. But to be honest, I think now that I look at it, it's actually better than before, because in the alpha stage it was completely pixelated, so they seem to have tweaked it. So it's pretty much doable. It's not that noticeable, but you will notice that on high it's a tad bit pixelated, but I think they've actually improved in all fairness. So that's just another thing to bear in mind, that probably if you can run your mirrors on ultra or epic, sorry, they call it epic, you probably would want to do that, because on epic the mirror quality is just far better. Just to show you there the articulation, you can see the bendy bus in action and kind of give you a glimpse of the physics. But yeah, that's just something else to bear in mind. But you know, to be fair, you'll be able to see out the mirror, see what's happening, so it does the job. But yeah, that's just one thing to bear in mind. Having it on high will take away a bit from the experience. And oops, we've clipped the, yeah, not too good what we've done here. We'll just have to reset the bus, or no, I think it's gonna steer out. Yeah, there we go. Don't think that's very realistic. Not sure that would happen in real life, but anyway. So that was just, sorry, I forgot to mention that when we were talking about the graphics. I thought I would just mention that as well. Now, the next thing to mention is the AI traffic. The AI traffic, compared to Omsi 2, it behaves a lot better. I know some people were saying that apparently Tourist Bus and Foreign Bus have some issues with AI traffic. Again, I haven't actually played either of those simulators, so I'm sure a lot of the other reviews will probably be comparing this, or at least mentioning Foreign Bus and Tourist Bus Simulator a lot more. But since I haven't played them, I can't really speak much. I've seen like 1 or 2 videos of it briefly, and I do notice that in terms of layout and gameplay, this is pretty much Foreign Bus but for cities, so it does have the Foreign Bus feel. So definitely if you've played Foreign Bus Simulator, the layout and the setup and everything will be quite familiar, because it's essentially just Foreign Bus but for city buses. And Tourist Bus Simulator, even the settings and the way they're set, is pretty much identical as well. So yeah, for those of you who have played either of those 2 simulators, this will be quite familiar. Well, I find the AI traffic behaves fairly well. As you saw earlier in the video, one of them did cut us off in the junction, even though we had priority because we were on the major road and they were on the minor road. Compared to Omsi 2, you know, it doesn't do anything crazy like slowing down to 2 kilometers an hour before turning. It doesn't like get confused where it blocks each other, you know, it ends up blocking the roads. So it behaves quite well. The other thing is when you crash into the vehicles, just one thing to mention is in contrast to Omsi 2, where they put on the warning lights and wait, they just continue driving here. So I'm not necessarily sure that's realistic, because probably if there's a crash, you know, they do what they do in Omsi 2, put on the hazard lights, and then, you know, you'd call the police. But that's just one thing to mention. But I think overall the AI traffic in the bus is far better than the one in Omsi 2. Now again, as you can see here, it's kind of pixelated, but the reason for that is, I find that when you're, this is probably because I'm zoomed out to the furthest, so as you can see, as you zoom in it looks better, but as you zoom out, for some reason the cars start to trail, they start to look a bit pixelated. I don't know, that's just the way it is. I have changed the zoom settings. I'll talk about the settings at the end, but that's just another thing to mention there. So depending on how you set your cab vision, it might be different. But the other thing about the AI traffic that's also much better than Omsi 2 is you can actually see people inside. So if you look there, you can see people driving the AI cars, which adds to the realism, because in Omsi 2 it's just like a window with sometimes a silhouette. So if you just take a look there, tree, you can see a human in there. It's kind of fast, so it's a bit hard to see, but if you pause the video, you will see that there's people inside the AI cars. This adds to the realism, so the cars have windows that are transparent. So again, this actually makes the simulation experience even more realistic. So again, this is another area I think this exceeds Omsi 2, and that is AI traffic. There we go. There's a There's a car. Let's now, if we can speed up, but the cars are faster than us. The other thing you'll notice is that the wheels aren't really spinning there. So I think this is the thing about the Unreal Engine 4 is to get the most out of the Unreal Engine 4, you actually need to have a pretty, not pretty high spec, but like medium spec PC. So you're probably looking at a 4GB VRAM GPU, that kind of thing, in order to get the most out of the simulation experience. Because I think the reason why, if you're on a low spec PC, you'll notice that the wheels don't rotate is just because your GPU is probably not fast enough. But obviously there's a GPU shortage at the moment, so it's probably hard to source a GPU. But that's one thing to bear in mind, as you're probably aware that the Unreal Engine 4 is GPU bound generally, so it does tend to require a lot of GPU power. It does use the CPU a fair bit as well, but especially the GPU, it's the graphics card. You really need a powerful graphics card to get the most out of the Unreal Engine 4. But as you can see there, if you zoom in, there are people in the car, so adds to the realism. I think that's meant to be a knockoff of the Audi. Now, the next thing to talk about is the map quality. Now, I wanted to talk about the map quality in Alexanderplatz, but we're kind of running a bit behind, and it's kind of the next thing I have down here. I just got a brief bullet points of, you know, all the stuff I need to mention, so make sure I mention everything. But the map quality, here we are at Hauptbahnhof. This is where the stuff gets interesting, but I have to say the map is absolutely stunning. It's instantly recognizable as Berlin, and it certainly does Berlin justice. So, you know, even if you have only been to Berlin, or if you live in Berlin, you'll certainly recognize the map. Alexanderplatz especially, I think, is absolutely superb. It has all the main attractions. It has the, I can't remember what the name of the tower is, but it's the old television tower. You have Brandenburg Gate, but I'm not sure if the route actually passes through Brandenburg Gate, but you can do a little detour and drive there if you want to go there on foot. And of course, this is the line TXL. It doesn't run anymore, but this is actually the Airport Express. So if any of you have been to Berlin and you use the bus to get from Tegel to Alexanderplatz, this will be a route that's familiar to you. I actually realized myself that I've actually been on this line, and it was allocated these buses here, the Scania Citywide LF. But the map is, it's amazing. And this is another reason why I think that the buses really, in the 8 years that Omsi 2 has been out, it's really the only bus simulator that kind of comes close to contending with Omsi 2, is because it actually has a real life map. A lot of these bus simulators these days, they seem to focus on fictional maps, like Bus Simulator 2021 is going to have a fictional map, and I just don't think that's... I think one of the main things that a bus simulator needs in order to be able to contend is to have a real life map, because people prefer to drive in a real city that is realistic rather than something that's made up. Oh, one of the air cars crashed. Well, that was my fault because we ran the red light there, but it was orange. But since we're kind of running behind, I don't want to make this video too long. Kind of wanted to be aligned with the review. But yeah, when it comes to this, like, if you even look there, the map just Hauptbahnhof, it looks quite good. And especially when you get to Alexanderplatz, you notice all the sites, and it certainly does Berlin justice. There's the Hauptbahnhof. Actually, let's just click home and get a thumbnail, perhaps. So if you click here, capture screenshot, it will save. The other thing about the map that makes it much better than Omsi 2's map is the fact that, in contrast to Omsi 2, where tiles disappear and you kind of see emptiness, or, you know, a blank space, or there's backdrops, basically just like 2D trees to cover the area where the map disappears. Here the map's quite dynamic. I haven't chosen probably the best spot there because you kind of see a horizon there, but that really only happens very rarely. So most of the time there's no horizon in sight. That kind of takes away a bit from the realism from the map. There's that tower I was talking about, by the way. As you can see it in the distance, so it just adds to the realism because the map is dynamic. As you can see ahead, it doesn't seem to like just randomly, the map doesn't seem to randomly end like it does in Omsi 2, and the visibility distance is quite high, so it just makes the simulation experience that extra bit, that bit better. So that's another area where I definitely think that this game just exceeds Omsi 2, because the map quality is superb. And because the thing about Omsi 2 is it has some really nice real life maps, but again, there's just limitations to the Omsi 2 engine. You can't create a map like this where it's completely dynamic. There's no missing, there's no areas where it disappears. So this is, again, is another reason why I'd say, why are the tracks not appearing there? Well, I'd say this kind of exceeds Omsi 2. Okay. Just notice here that tram tracks have disappeared. There are meant to be tram tracks here. I don't know why they've been removed. I'm not sure if it's my settings, but last time I did this route, there were tram tracks here. Why they are not here now, I don't know. Perhaps... yeah, that's strange. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Yeah. Let me point to look at the settings. But I don't know why the tram tracks are missing. It's strange. But yeah, there was tram tracks there. I'm not sure. So they have changed quite a bit since last time I played this, because I kind of played this last Sunday. I haven't really played it since. So a few stuff has been updated to the game, but yeah, I'm not sure where the tram tracks have gone, but again, the tram's really something that's more of phase 3. I will talk a bit about the future of the game towards the end. The other thing about the map is, as you can see, the building quality is excellent. All the buildings, most of the buildings are real to life as they are in Berlin. So, and the thing is, obviously the texture quality is better because the Unreal Engine 4 allows for better modeling of the buildings. But you know, the modeling of the buildings is pretty much as you'd expect it. It's quite good, can't really fault it. One thing to mention is probably in contrast to Omsi 2 is Omsi 2, the bus stops, they're quite detailed in the sense that they show you, that they say where it tells you like what route stops at what stop. So each bus stop will have the name of the bus stop as well as what route stop there. Whereas you look at here, it's a bit more, okay, it's a bit more generic. So if you get off and you take a look here, it just says Tarifbereich, that's what it says, doesn't it? Yeah, Tarifbereich. So as you can see here, it's just generic. So the bus stops aren't as detailed. They don't tell you, it doesn't say on the bus stops that it's the stop name or the route name. But again, I wouldn't say that's the most important thing, because although it's a nice little feature, it does take ages to actually implement, you know, put in the stop name of each route. So again, it's not something that's too major, I feel. But that's just another thing to point out, that compared to Omsi 2, in terms of, you know, the bus stops, they haven't actually added in the names. But I'd say for people who want to make their own maps, which will be a possibility after phase 2, you will be able to add in your own. You'll be able to add in probably the names of the bus stops and the route numbers if you so wish. But that's not something they've done with the Berlin map. But again, I don't really think it's too necessary for them to do it anyway, so it's not too much of an issue. But overall, I'd say the map quality, just because the Omsi 2's capabilities are limited, certainly you have a lot more scope to build a map with this game, and it just make it more dynamic. As you can see there's a building towards the end, but it doesn't disappear, so again, it makes the city just feel more alive. Now, the next thing to probably talk about then is price. So the price of this game for phase 1 is going to be €25.95. It seems strange that that's the price rather than €25, but it's €25.95. I guess those 95 cents add up. It's quite a reasonable price for an early access. A lot of simulators and early access games these days are the €20 to €25 game. It's certainly a lot more reasonably priced than Tram Sim, that's for sure. And you know, compared to other simulators on the market, it's quite competitively priced. So I certainly think that €25 is very reasonable for this game, because you get your 2 buses currently in phase 1, the Scania LF, the Solo as well. You get your Berlin map with line TXL. You get a really nice map, really detailed. You get decent sounds and physics. Again, these are probably the areas that the simulator falls shortest in. But you know, those 2 things aside, everything else is pretty much superb. So I think €25.95 is quite a good value for money. The other thing to mention is that this is the early access price, so as phase 2 and phase 3 are implemented, the price will rise as well, so probably to €30 or €35. So, you know, if this is something that you feel like you're going to continue to play as they add in more content, which I will talk about now towards the end of the video, then certainly I would recommend picking this up, because I think it's quite good value. And potentially, I mean, if the game goes on sale, you know, down the line, it'd probably be a very long while until you see the €25 again. Now, this has been in development for 4 years, and it's going to be probably in the full development for another 1.5 years, so 5.5 years of development. So, you know, quite a lot of man hours have been put into this game. So, you know, it's not kind of like a release and forget project. It's going to be continually developed. But overall, I think €25.95 is quite a reasonable price. And now I know some of you are probably going to be saying, ah, yes, but you didn't pay anything for the game, and that is true. But I would say that I was going to pay for it. I would think it's reasonable. And if you look at some of my reviews on Steam, anytime I think a game is not priced reasonably, like you'll see I've written for Tram Sim and some of the add-ons for Omsi 2, I will actually say if it's not a good value for money. So, you know, just to point that out as well, I just think that €25 is reasonable value for money for the game. So, you know, for those of you who might make that argument, which is a fair argument, if you take a look at my Steam reviews, you'll see that whenever something I don't think is priced reasonably, I will mention it. So, just to mention that. Now. Yeah. Again, I hope you can turn off ticket selling. Another thing is, doesn't seem to be cheats in ticket selling like there is in Omsi 2, where you can just use keyboard shortcuts, but look at, who knows. Now, I'm just going to talk a bit more about the map, and then we'll go to the settings, because we almost finished the line TXL. So now we turn left at Alexanderplatz, and this is really where I want to talk a bit more about the map, because the map is absolutely superb when it comes to detail. As you can see, there's bicycles everywhere that adds to the feeling of the city. Those are water pipes, by the way. It's quite interesting that they have the water pipes elevated. But anyway, here at Alexanderplatz, I remember because when I was driving here in Alexanderplatz, I instantly recognized the area because I actually took a picture there in real life of the area, because obviously it was like one of those tourist hotspots, as they call them. But it was instantly recognizable, and it just goes to show how detailed the map is. Because Alexanderplatz is instantly recognizable. And the other thing is, if we take a look at the rivers now, when we turn, you'll see that they don't just fade away again, as is the case in Omsi 2. So again, quite nice. But this definitely here, Alexanderplatz is my favorite area of the map. It's just, it's full of, it's full of attractions, it's full of scenery, and it's just quite nice as well. One thing to mention is, you probably noticed that there's not many AI cars, but that's because I've set my AI cars to 60. You can customize your AI cars, but I'll talk about that a bit more in the settings part of the video. I will have a specific video about explaining the settings, particularly for performance and how this runs on a low spec PC. So if you want an even more in-depth overview of that, do make sure to check that video. Check out that video. It will be scheduled on Tuesday, the 23rd of March. And the other thing to mention is the map's based off Berlin in 2018. So, it's fairly modern day. Obviously, it's a few years behind, but yeah, Berlin 2018 is when it's set. I will also talk about the weather, and I will give you my overview. I just kind of want to talk a bit more about the map as we pass along in it, because the settings, I don't want to do it in the middle of the video. I'd rather do it when we finish the line, which will basically finish now in the next few minutes. So yeah, there's your ticket. They don't want the same ticket today. Sometimes they want the ABC. And away we go. Yeah, you will notice there's people walking around. There's even people walking in the middle as well. That adds to the how dynamic the city is. So that's another thing about Omsi 2 is a lot of the areas, because people add to the lag, and because just the AI vehicles add to the lag, they didn't have a lot of people. But as you can see here, there's people walking around. They're not two-dimensional like in Omsi 2, which just adds to the realism. So it just makes Berlin feel lively, because as you can see there, there's people walking, so it actually feels like an alive city. I know the streets are fairly empty, but that's kind of because I've reduced the AI traffic. And I think it just tends to be that this street is rather quiet, because in compared to the other streets, this street always has the least amount of cars. It's kind of surprising because it's a pretty wide boulevard. But as you can see there, again, you don't notice any places that are disappearing, so it kind of feels like you're in Berlin in real life. I know I've said that a lot, but anyway. Oh yeah, the people quality. I kind of forgot to talk about the people quality, but yeah, the people are modeled quite well. With the Unreal Engine 4, I remember with Tram Sim, when you had them in low settings, they kind of looked a bit off, but they look quite... It looks quite good. You do notice sometimes the same people get on the bus, so obviously there's only a finite number of people that they've made, but I think it's definitely more than Omsi 2, and generally it's quite varied. Now, if you take a look here, there to the left, there's the river again. Doesn't disappear, so it feels quite alive, It's kind of like what you'd expect to see if you're there in real life. So I think they've done a really good job when it comes to making the map. This is the area I was talking about, so Alexanderplatz. I instantly recognize it, and I think definitely it's done Berlin justice, because it's just... It's phenomenal, really. This is like part of East Berlin, just to mention as well. But yeah, this is one of the areas that's quite tourist noise. So let's just take a look around. Again, there's another lake, river, something like that. There's also brands. We did see like there was Lidl. There was, I'm not sure if there was a Bilal. I'm not sure if there's Lidl in Germany, but we did see a Lidl. So there are like real life brands. And I know in some games they don't put the real life brands due to copyright reasons, but they have here. Yeah, okay. So we have the tracks there. The tram tracks there, or yes. So again, I'm not sure what's going on with the tram tracks. They don't seem to be on the road. I'm not sure if they've removed them or something. Yeah, I don't know what's happened there. The elevated tracks are there, but I'm not sure why the non-elevated tracks are there. But actually, before I talk about the settings and the other stuff, because it makes sense just to talk about it now, I've kind of talked about the map. You can kind of see for yourself how good it is. Let's just take a look there. Yeah, so I think they must have removed them. They'll probably add them back in, but they were there beforehand. I don't know why they've removed them. But I don't think it's anything to do with the settings. It just wouldn't make sense for the tracks to disappear when the settings are missing, because that would just take away from the realism, really. And I don't think having tracks on the road will impact performance too drastically either. But anyway, because obviously they're there. Anyway, that's really the map there. Just, it's absolutely phenomenal. You know, it's very detailed. Obviously, they spent a lot of time making sure everything is accurate. So I'd say definitely the map is one of the major selling points of the simulator. Now, before I talk about settings and weather, as you're going towards the last stop, just to quickly mention some of the main features you can expect to be added into Phase 2 and 3. Okay, so there you go. There's the tram tracks. Okay, they're there now. I think probably what's happened is some of the tracks must have gotten removed, so that's why they're not there, because they're there here. Because in Berlin, there are some places where there's tram tracks, but they don't actually have any tram lines running there. So it could have been that was the case. But in Phase 2, they will be adding in multiplayer as well as an Unreal Engine 4 editor, so people will be able to make their own buses and maps for the game. In addition, in Phase 3, they will be adding AI trams. I think they're going to be adding AI buses in Phase 2. So one thing you notice is there's no AI buses at the moment. They will be adding that into Phase 2. One thing probably that is worth consideration is it going to make a massive impact on performance, because obviously in Omsi 2, AI buses are one of the biggest inducers of lag. So again, I wonder if that will be the case for the bus, but we shall see. Time will tell. But yes, there will be AI trams as well, and they did kind of hint that there's a possibility they might make the trams drivable in the future, because they said there are tram tracks, so that shows the potential of the simulator as well. But those are kind of the stuff that you can expect added into the future. So generally, a lot of the core features are there. You know, I think in terms of like physics, graphics, they've kind of like really finalized stuff, but obviously they might improve stuff a bit. But I think the main core of it is there. So now this is the last stop here, so we're going to let the passengers alight, and then I'll show you the settings and the weather features, and I'll give you my overview as well. So this is the full line TXL from Tegel Flughafen, which is Tegel Airport, to Alexanderplatz. So let's just close up the doors, and then let's turn off the engine. Yeah, this is the layover point, and then we just need to put the bus in neutral, and we click Y, or just click it like that. So now, let's take a look. Okay, there's still people on the bus. Now, actually, another thing to mention is there's something with the deboarding. So, what you'll notice is the deboarding is not very realistic. That's another thing to point out. As you can see, the passengers just randomly appear out of nowhere. They don't actually appear from the seats. Again, this is perhaps will be, you know, patched in later versions. But I know people were saying about Foreign Bus and I think it was Tourist Bus that the way the passengers deboard is completely unrealistic and it needs to be fixed. So yeah, that's another thing to mention, that compared to Omsi 2, I think the lighting of the passengers is off as well. Now you can just ignore this, it'll let us continue. But yeah, so that's just something to bear in mind. So I'll kind of do it in the pros and cons as well. You'll be able to read my Steam review as well if you so wish on the 25th, when we can actually publish those, because obviously the game's not out yet. But yeah, that's just another thing to mention. So as you can see here, this is Alexanderplatz. There you go. There is the bus. There is the terminus. Let's just get a screenshot. So they have a screenshot function thing, because if you use F12, you're going to get the overlays in your screenshot, which is probably not what you want. So I would recommend just using this thing. You use the home button and you can take your screenshots. Yeah, I'm not going to get that in the background. Never mind. Anyhow, so what do we need to mention now? Okay, settings, yeah. So the next thing I want to talk about quickly are the settings. So in terms of settings, you can customize all your keybinds. So I've actually changed my keybinds. So I've basically put in the Omsi 2 keybind. So if you go into controls, as you can see here, if you click on anything, you can click add key, and that means you can add a keybind. In addition, you can also delete the current keybind. So if you want to delete it, you just click remove, or you can just edit the current keybind and change it. One thing to mention is make sure you click accept for it to register, because if you click back, it won't register. With the keybinds, one thing to mention is it seems that it will be the case that you have to change them individually for every bus. So you have general, which is really about walking around, kind of the radio, that kind of thing. And then you have the Scania Citywide, which includes both the solo and the bendy bus. So it seems if you want to change the keybinds, you have to do them individually for every bus, which is a tad bit of a nuisance, but anyway. You have audio as well, so there is music actually, and there is a radio. I think they do dev updates every Friday at 8 a.m. is what they seem to say. So if you want to be listening to if you want to, listen to the radio, if you want to have some music going, then you can enable that as well. I've disabled the music in case there's any copyright issues with it. I'm not sure if there is or not. I couldn't find what the track titles are, so better safe than sorry, as they say. In terms of graphics, I have a specific video scheduled for Tuesday that will talk about graphics. But again, as I said, one thing I tend to notice is that changing the graphics doesn't really make too much of a difference in appearance. Just to show you, if you click texture quality, put low and accept, there you go. There's the texture quality. The difference is almost minimal. It's not even that noticeable at all. So that's the thing. In terms of, as is the case with the Unreal Engine 4, I think changing the graphics doesn't make too much of a noticeable impact, really. It's you see there a tad bit of change of like colors. Oh, I'm not even sure how I did that. So you can see the driver. Interesting. Don't ask me how I did that. I just don't know how that appeared. That is very strange. I didn't even know you could see the driver. How do I hide him now? I must have clicked one of these buttons. Nope. How'd you appear? Well, yeah, there you go. Apparently you can look at the driver as well. I don't know how that happened. I haven't seen it either. But yeah, that's another neat little feature. I wonder if you can change the character. I don't know. I didn't even know this was a feature because I was looking through the settings. I must have missed the part about the driver. How do I change this? But anyway, that's the graphics. And then there's also the game, which is, with the game, this is where you change the AI. So at the very bottom, you can change the number of AI cars. I've set mine to 60 because just improve performance. But if you're on a high spec PC, you can put to 100 and then you'll get a lot more cars driving about. But yeah, I find if you lower it, it does seem to be quite drastic, the effect. It seems to turn down the AI traffic quite a bit because when I had it on high, there's quite a bit, like on 100, but anyway. And then here's your stuff about force feedback. So this does support steering wheels and will support PS4 and Xbox controllers in phase 2. There's your camera, so you can also change the settings here. So if you don't want tooltips, the tutorial, which is basically the stuff at the bottom left telling you what buttons to click, you can turn it off. Passenger comments will be added into phase 3, but that's just there as a, preemptively. You have your invisible walls. This thing about invisible walls is basically some areas of the map are locked off, so you can actually drive there. This is because in phase 1, some of the areas that will be featured in phase 2 are locked off as well. Well, those are really the settings. Again, I'll have a full video about that for you on Tuesday, about how to change all the settings. Now, the next thing also is the weather. Now, let me just pause this and figure out how to make this chap disappear. Okay, basically what I did is I just went into the bus, and then when I went back out of the bus, it disappeared. But anyway, the next thing also is the weather. So there's weather features already. So in contrast to Tram Sim, for example, which is going to be a full release, here you have weather features. So you have precipitation, which is rain, and you click back, it's raining. We also have storm. If you click back, there's a storm, so there should be lightning. One thing I find is that in Unreal Engine 4, at least for this game here, the bus, I find that the game actually looks a lot better in rain and in stormy weather than in the normal weather. So I think actually the rain weather is where you kind of get the best kind of experience, because it seems to be the most realistic. I find when it's sunny, there's a bit too much of lighting issues and a bit too much of unnatural kind of saturation levels. That's my opinion anyway. Then go back to weather. We also have fog. We put fog there. Oh, I didn't click accept. Yeah, there's fog. And we also have fog and precipitation. And you can have dynamic where it changes and it varies. But yeah, so the weather is fully customizable. There's also nighttime as well, so you can set the time in the control in the menu when you're setting up the route you want to do. So when you're setting up basically what bus and route you're going to drive. So now is mainly the overview. So the way I'll do this is in a pros and cons kind of way, and basically kind of give you the overview. So as we know, there is kind of an intention for at least on Aerosoft's behalf that this will contend or replace Omsi 2, because they did approach the TML studios in 2016 to create a new bus simulator, and clearly the idea is that it will contend with Omsi 2. And I have to say, with all the bus simulators out there on the market, and especially those that are especially those bus simulators that are scheduled to come this year, like Bus Simulator 21, SimBus, I think this one probably has the biggest potential of competing with Omsi 2. Perhaps SimBus 21 might. I don't know too much about it. I think Bus World as well is quite a promising bus simulator. I will be bringing it to the channel as well. But when it comes to Bus Sim 21, I'm a bit skeptical as to how successful that will be, because it does not have a real life map. Not sure it's going to have an editor. But anyway, that aside, I think with this game, the bus modeling quality is excellent. The AI traffic far exceeds Omsi 2's AI traffic. The performance is superb. when it basically, you know, optimization, there isn't really any crashes, there isn't any much lag spikes, freezing, stuttering. The AI traffic behaves fairly well. As you saw, there did crash into us once, but that was kind of our fault because we ran a red light. There was also the fact that the AI cars have people inside them. Graphics are quite nice, you know, the texture quality is much better than Omsi 2. One thing to mention is that whenever you're going in low-lit areas, there is pixelation, so that's a bit of a disadvantage. The other thing is I find that stuff looks better when you're outside. When you're inside the bus, things don't look as good. And in terms of settings, pretty much everything's customizable. I actually forgot to mention you can change, unlike Omsi 2, you have to go into notepad files. You can actually change the position here. So if you want to change how zoomed in or out you are, you can change it by this here, and then you can even lift yourself up or down. So if you want to be able to see the mirror, so it allows you, gives you that full control. Actually, I think I like this better. Looks a bit artificial. Let's lower it down a bit. But again, just shows you the amount of customizability that you have. And what's this do actually? Here's your route as well. But yeah, you can add in your own keybinds, which allows you to basically put in the controls that you want. You can change the gamma and the shadow. I don't think I've got the right gamma and contrast settings. I think they're a bit off. I need to look at them as well. But again, you know, the customizability is there. What else is there? Price-wise, I think €25.95 is a pretty good deal for this game, considering it's early access, how detailed it is, the amount of work that's gone into it. Map navigation, again, quite easy to navigate. Know the route. You have your mini map at the bottom right. You can also click M to see the entire map. You zoom in and out. So again, this tells you where to go, what you need to do, that kind of thing. Loading times are vastly superior to Omsi 2. So when it comes to loading times, it takes about 1 minute to load the game. So again, you know, Omsi 2's loading times is just, especially as new maps are being developed that are very heavy, this game exceeds it in loading time. So these are all the areas I think that the bus just beats Omsi 2, and this is why it makes it such a strong contender to Omsi 2, because, you know, it beats it in map quality. The map's dynamic. There's no areas where it disappears or where it just feels like flat. It's quite dynamic. It's very detailed. The stops aren't as detailed, but then again, is it that important? I don't feel so. But again, you may have a different opinion. Perhaps at the moment there's no fully working iBus, but I think they said it will be added in phase 3. Not too sure, but again, that's something to bear in mind. But then again, as always, even though there are pros, there are also cons, and I think the areas where this simulator probably falls the shortest are physics and sounds. The physics are okay. I mean, the articulation of the bus is quite good. You know, it's pretty much as you would expect it to be, but I think there's a bit of issues with the hill detection. I think this is something that people said was also an issue in Fern Bus as well, perhaps even in Tourist Bus. I don't know about Tourist Bus Simulator, but anyway, that's just something to bear in mind. Perhaps will be improved upon in the future, or if not, modders like V3D, and especially when they release the modding tools in phase 2, people will be able to make their own buses with better physics, and for the community as well. And then sounds as well. Sounds, I think they're okay, you know. I wouldn't say they're amazing. They're definitely not amazing, and they definitely could work with improvement. And if you're comparing them to Omsi 2, certainly Omsi 2 far exceeds the sounds far exceeds this game when it comes to sounds, because the Scania sounds, although their acceleration is way too generic, it feels a bit like ETS2 in the sense that it's just kind of doesn't really feel that accurate. It feels a bit kind of like a generic game sounds that are used for pretty much any game with some sort of vehicle. I know there's some of the Scania sounds in there you can kind of recognize they've been recorded from a Scania, I think. Now, don't quote me on that, but still, it's definitely missing some of the sounds that the bus makes in real life, and definitely could work with improvement. That being said, when it's slowing down, the sounds are pretty much spot on. So it's just the acceleration where the sounds need a bit of improvement. So, you know, as was kind of expected, when it comes to physics and sounds, this is probably the areas where it probably has a bit of the struggles a bit to compete with Omsi 2. So overall though, I think this does have a strong chance of competing with Omsi 2. I think it has a lot of positives. I think in a lot of areas it kind of addresses some of the features that many of the bus simulators haven't, and especially when phase 2 and phase 3 come out, we'll have even more features. But overall, I think this is quite a neat bus simulator. I will continue to showcase it on the channel, and I will also be doing some live streams of this. I will have tutorials for the bus. So do make sure to subscribe to the channel to stay even more on top of the bus. I hope you found this review helpful. If you have any additional questions, don't hesitate to comment down below, and I will endeavor to reply to every single comment, which I tend to do anyway. And do make sure to join the Discord as well for even more information. And we have incorporated TML's announcements channel into our Discord, so you can get all the major announcements in there as well. Another thing to mention is, since this is an early access, and of course when you're purchasing the early access, you yourself can get involved in the development, phase, and you can give your own input. If you click F1, you can send your own feedback to TML. So this allows you to directly submit feedback to TML. So you click F1, you enter what you want to say, and there's a screenshot as well. So say if there's a bug or something, you just click F1 and it will give you the bug, and you can just close this off if you want to cancel. But then again, if you want to get involved in development, that's how you do that as well. And that's really it for now. Give the video a thumbs up so even more people can find this review, and I hope it was helpful. That's it for now. Until next time.